when a doctor says he's surprised, in our language, he's shocked. And so I'm cancer free.
I am Amy Matthews, and I am a good friend and sometimes campaign consultant, sometimes just general pain in the behind to Judge Justin Joyce, who is the current Justice of the Peace in Precinct 3 in Fort Bend County, and he's running for re-election. And today we're going to do a little bit of a special episode because we are going to talk about some recent things that you have been through. And I want to give an opportunity for you to share with people in your own words what you've gone through. Folks who have this type of journey, I think it's really important for them to have that catharsis of sharing about it and working through it. And so I want to do that today with you. What would you like to tell the voters, and some of your friends and family may even be hearing this for the first time as well? So what would you like to tell people about the last year of your life and your health?
Well, I would say my health started though many, many years ago when I was in law enforcement, and I always believed in taking care of myself physically as well as mentally. Kind of do what's called the senior shuffle, where I'm still out and I'm still moving. For 20 years, I ran marathons. I completed 14 marathons and always stayed in shape, lifted weights, and always take care of myself. And this past year, I got diagnosed with cancer. So you start in the process in the medical deal. And so, first thing they do blood tests. Well, everything came back normal. And I'm not fatigued or anything. I feel great. I'm still working out. And this thing's getting bigger. And so the next thing you want to do, a CAT scan. So it takes a couple of weeks to set all that up, and you get in there and you do the CAT scan. And so now you get the blood test, it looks normal. The CAT scan, yeah, there's something solid in there. And because by this time it had grown to about the size of a marble. And then so they like, okay, so we're going to have to do a biopsy. So that's 3 weeks out, and I get in there to see the surgeon because I had the CAT scan, and he was a very nice young man, very, very nice young man. I went down to his offices in Houston, and so it's pretty good size. It's the size of a golf ball. It's on my neck, and I still don't know what it is. It was kind of interesting because he comes in, he says, "Mr. Joyce," he said, "I've been looking through your medical records," and he said, "I've looked at your CAT scan." He says, "I just want to ask you," he says, "how did you break your eye socket?" I'm thinking,
That's not what I'm here for, doctor.
And so I was like, I couldn't remember. I grew up, I had 4 brothers, and there was a lot, we're Irish. There was a lot of, fisticuffs and just stuff over the years. And I was like, oh, now I remember. It goes back to 37 years ago. I was arresting a guy, and he was completely compliant. And then he just decided he didn't want to be compliant anymore, and he sucker punched me. And he's the guy, because I wound up going to the hospital and X-ray. But anyway, so I told doctor that. We got through that, and so he's like, okay, well, so they did the biopsy, and he says, I've been looking at your record. He says, I think he says, I'm pretty sure it's cancer. He says, but we're going to analyze it, and we're going to let you know specifically. So about 10 days later, they come back and they go, yep, it's stage 4 cancer. And this mass in your neck now has grown to 17 centimeters, which, get a tennis ball, and it's a little bit smaller than a tennis ball. And matter of fact, I got a picture of my CAT scan, and that's it below my ear, and it was huge.
Yeah.
And so
may I just point out that when I saw that, this is the nature of our relationship. I said to your wife, there's nothing there in the brain area.
Well, that's a solid mass too.
She thought that was hilarious. I did go, because she had told me that this is 17. Like when I went and looked, I was like, I mean, it was a much bigger than I imagined when she said it, when I pulled it out on a ruler.
Yeah. And it was so fast growing. And so they were talking about doing surgery and radiation and chemotherapy, they determined that that tumor, because of the size of it, where it was located on my carotid artery, and there's major nerves that run up and down in there. If they had done surgery, it would have affected my speech, my ability to swallow, my ability to use the size of my face, and also the ability to raise my left arm. And so they determined it was inoperable. And because it was inoperable, they put me on a drug. It was FDA approved, but it was considered an experimental drug. And the doctor that developed it is a doctor by the name of Jim Allison. And he is a physician at MD Anderson Hospital. He won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for developing this drug. And they believe it's the future of cancer care, because what I would do is I would get an infusion, and every 3 weeks I would get the infusion at MD Anderson. But it's a chemical, but it's not like chemo. I mean, we all know people that have been through chemotherapy and how ill they are and how lethargic, how sick they are. The immunotherapy that I got, it didn't do that. I felt fatigued, but I was very, very fortunate that, I never missed a day of work because of it. And thank God the MD Anderson campus, it's less than 3 miles from my house here in Sugar Land, and I could get my infusions there. And so every 3 weeks I would go in, I would get a battery of blood tests. They would analyze to make sure that my liver, my kidneys, and everything was working correctly. And then I would get the infusion. It took about 45 minutes to an hour. And then I could go about my life. And like the only side effect I had was the fatigue. I got home from work, I was pretty tired, and I had to, kind of step away from the working out. But over the course of 3 treatments, the tumor went from this huge mass on my neck to I could barely find it. And so when I went back to see the oncologist at MD Anderson, he could barely find it. And they'd done a CAT scan, and I still remember Dr. Mott coming in and saying, "Miss Joyce, I've got the CAT scan results." And he said, "I want to read you the report that the radiologist has sent over, but I want to read to you what this doctor wrote." And she wrote that there's been a significant decrease in the tumor. He said, "Mr. Joyce," he said, "it went from 17, he said it decreased in size 95%. He said, "We were hoping to get a 30% decrease in the tumor so that we could do surgery." He said, he says, I can't even feel it," which that was great. I had another infusion that day, and they wanted me to have surgery 2 weeks later they wanted to take the lymph nodes out to make sure that the cancer hadn't spread to any of the lymph nodes. And so I had the surgery, and I can report that cancer was all gone. They never found any of it in my lymph nodes. As a matter of fact, the surgeon told my wife after the surgery, he said, "I couldn't even find any dead cells." He said it was completely gone. And he says, they deal with hundreds, if not thousands, of cancer patients. They were surprised. When a doctor says he's surprised, in our language, he's shocked. And so I'm cancer free. And like I said, this drug that they used, what they're telling me is that because of what I went through, and they'll use it in their studies, but they said this is the future of cancer care, and I hope it is. You know, because cancer, so 2 words, it sucks. It I sum it
Definitely.
up. It
Yeah,
does.
absolutely.
There was nothing fun about it. I'll just say that the people that work in that field, they're angels. They have to have, because they lose. They go in every day not knowing, hey, can we save these people? Are they going to die?
As your friend, somebody who watched you through this
Yeah.
process, You guys were initially very quiet about what was going on. And,
Yeah.
I don't think you went
Mm.
out a whole lot, because when I did get the opportunity to see you at that point, it was very, very large, and it was,
Yeah.
kind of sticking out. And my understanding is that this was a skin cancer that you had many years ago,
Yeah.
that had not, you believed it had been removed, but a cell or two must have stayed in there.
Right.
And it, all these years later, it found its way up here and lodged itself
Yeah.
in a lymph node up here, and then it just started growing. And there was a considerable period of time that you have to go through when you're first diagnosed, where you have to go through the testing, you have to get, and during that time it was growing, growing, growing. And I can't imagine how scary that must have been for you. And again, I'm very dear friends with your wife, and I've been married to my husband for 20 years. You guys have been married closer to 40. To see someone that you love, that something growing, that's, a physical showing of sickness, right? Because many times our loved one that has cancer, you don't see it actually growing, but this you could see. And how disconcerting that must have been. It was a lot of, I'm sure, trying of the patience. You had to be very patient and wait for the information at that time, for sure. And then, so the gratitude that we have all had in watching you go through this treatment, to not have what can often happen with chemotherapy and with radiation,
Oh
which
boy.
means like you're so wiped out and you're so depleted, whether that's from basically wasting syndrome, not being able to eat or keep food down,
Yeah.
to just pure exhaustion and things like that. You were tired, but you were not
No.
chemo radiation tired, and that was your main symptom. So
Yeah.
that gift of being able to continue to run your court and being able to just continue going was huge in this process
Yeah.
of, I think it
Yeah.
kept you motivated too, right? Because especially someone, you're one of those people, you don't like to sit still and you like to get places early. Like if you had just been stuck in your house staring at four walls feeling miserable, that would have been a
Oh
very
my
different
gosh.
experience for you, which
Yeah.
affects your attitude, which affects your ability to be resilient.
Like one morning they had me set up for uh for the infusion, and I had a docket that day too, and so I was able to do both. It's and I got to where I drove myself to my appointments, and then afterwards I could drive to the office, or I could,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that telling your story, the thing that's powerful about it is this hope that the FDA will see
Yeah.
the amazing results that you had, and I'm sure that others are having, and maybe it starts to become more widely available. That's kind of just where they are with the drug right now. But you are, I mean, boy, the word is definitely gratitude that you were in proximity to a hospital where the doctor
Yeah.
who invented this drug
Yeah.
practices and so on.
Yeah.
And we do not take it for granted for a minute, but we wanted
No.
to share that with people so that they would know, that this is part of why we're doing a little bit of a different strategy with videos and reaching out as well. Like you have a newer precinct because of redistricting, and then you went through this, and we want to make sure that we maximize your energy levels, and you're going to be out meeting people as much as you can. But there was a little bit of a delay in doing some of that because you were getting treatment and prioritizing running your court and your health, right? In other ways.
Yeah.
So now we're back in full swing, and the signs are out and the websites are up and all the
Yeah.
good stuff. But how would you say, because I know many people who have said cancer has changed the way that they see things. How would you say that it's changed the way that you view things a little bit?
I know that it changed me as far as how I view maybe just different things that really aren't as important in life
Yeah.
as I thought they were.
I really makes you kind of take stock, right? Like here's where I am, here's where my life is. And you're lucky, you're blessed. You have an amazing family, you have a job that you really love, you have a staff that you really love, you have dogs that you really love. And I think it's part of why we are doing this series. When I talk about joy and infusing joy, for me, that's very intentional because you have just been through some serious things. And so while we will never be disrespectful of the court or of the voters of the electorate of any of those things, we're going to smile, we're going to have fun, we're going to enjoy connecting and hope that that connects with other people because, life has been kind of heavy lately. And so that's been part of it for me. I have noticed that you are more at ease. And
Yeah.
I would imagine that when you have faced something so scary, everything else feels a little easier. That's my impression of you. That's how I have experienced you differently since this. You actually
Yeah.
are less tense because I think you feel like I've already faced the scary thing.
As far as how it's affected me, I would say that everything's not a life and death situation with the way that the life goes on. As far as some of the regrets in life, and I think some of that I probably wished I hadn't worked so many part-time jobs, but then again too, we had college to pay for, and we had all these different expenses and everything. And so you have to do what it is that you have to do. But but I wouldn't say I have any major regrets. I mean, not like my wife, whose parents said, I'm not really sure you should marry that guy.
Yes,
And it
well, we do
wasn't,
know.
and it wasn't because I was a bad guy, but it's like, and Mary's mom told her, it's like, out of all my daughters, you picked the hardest path because you're married to a man that he might not come home one night. We're really blessed, man. We have so many good friends and family. uh and thank goodness, it all turned out the way that it did. I could have had a different outcome, because if they'd have
Yeah.
just gotten a 30% decrease in the size of the tumor, I would have had the major surgery. It would have affected me.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
so
We're
yes, I
really, really
feel.
grateful. And
Yeah.
it's been we're lucky, obviously we know not everyone gets as good or as positive of a
No,
story. And that's not
no.
lost on us, those of us who care for you, and it's not lost on you for sure. So
Thanks,
we just
Amy.
wanted
Yeah.
to share that with everyone and be as upfront as possible about that so that you understood kind of, where you have been coming from this last year as you've been working hard to maintain the balance of all of these things and do
Yeah.
the right thing. And I couldn't be happier for you that you were able to get through it in such a way. And I know that it's not going to be lost on you. And I love that you still want to serve this court after having gone through this. You're still very sure that this is what you want to do, because I just
Oh
think
yeah.
that you were kind of meant to do this. That's kind of been a part of my takeaway of talking to you about this stuff is, um, I believe, because I work with people who build their businesses in different aspects, and I believe that we take all of our life experiences into what we do professionally. And it informs us and who we are and all of that. And you already have a tremendous capacity for empathy and things like that. And this continues to to inform that in the way that where you meet people who come through your court as well. So I
Thank
thank
you.
you for sharing that, because I know it's not easy to. So this was an easier way for us to disseminate this out to people so that they know and understand, and hopefully hear the message that maybe there's even better treatments coming in cancer. And we hope that
Oh
more
yeah.
people's loved ones get the same outcome that you did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sometimes